Upon the polished obsidian surface of the Meridian Prime diplomatic table sat a dented metal watering can. Beside it rested the Ledger of Shadows, the official Zalari sovereignty record dictating the end of an 11-year war. High Lady Alara stared at the rusted spout in absolute bewilderment. A feared human warbringer required a signature to bind their species in marriage, not archaic gardening equipment. Offended by the anomaly, her refined civilian sensibilities demanded order. Smoothing her ceremonial robes, she waited for the brute to explain himself. Commander Julian Thorne offered no apologies for the clutter. The Solari Coalition officer simply reached his heavy, scarred hand past the sacred gold-wrapped treaty. With his thumb, he carefully adjusted a microclimate dial on a portable terrarium. Inside the glass cylinder rested fragile crimson fire ferns. He watched the digital humidity readout stabilize before finally picking up the ceremonial stylus. A diplomatic binding requires mutual survival, Thorne stated, his voice carrying the metallic rasp of a man used to breathing recycled air. These ferns require exactly 70% ambient moisture. I ensure both. I thought I understood the nature of violence, but you need to hear what he did to the stars themselves. 3 hours after the bonding ceremony, that fragile illusion of peace shattered. Deep, rhythmic alarms howled through the steel corridors of the Solari flagship, the Vanguard. 3 renegade castes had broken the ceasefire lines. Burning hard toward the undefended outer colonies, their weapon banks glowed with lethal intent. Alara braced her spine against a cold bulkhead as the deck plates vibrated under her delicate Zalari bone structure. Raw panic should have flooded the human command deck. By her cultural logic, a broken treaty demanded immediate whaling for reinforcements, scrambling of defensive grids, and the recalculation of political leverage. Instead, the bridge crew operated in an eerie, synchronized silence. Ensign Leo Kale typed targeting coordinates with steady, rhythmic strikes. This stillness, she assumed, was shock. Paralyzed by the sudden collapse of their diplomatic victory, these soldiers were completely unaware they were calculating a slaughter. Screamed the warning sirens, utterly ignored by the man at the center of the room. Thorne stood before the primary tactical display, his posture loose. The planetary defense fleets he did not summon, a casualty projection he did not request. The castes utilize impenetrable radiation shields, Alara warned, her vocal cords tight with suppressed terror. A direct assault is mathematically inadvisable. We must retreat and call the Sovereignty Council. We aren't assaulting, Thorne replied, never looking away from the glowing holomap. We are threading the debris field. It might scuff the port hull plating a bit. Scuff the plating, a high-velocity dive through shattered moons, madness pure and unadulterated. The Vanguard's sublight drives ignited with a concussive thud, a physical blow that rattled the roots of her teeth. By a fraction of a second, artificial gravity compensation lagged. The sharp scent of ozone and heated copper flooded the air scrubbers. Perfectly balanced stood Thorne, his boots magnetically locked to the grating. Gripping a restraint bar until her knuckles turned translucent, Alara fought to keep her knees from buckling under the sudden G-force spike. The first renegade fleet, they intercepted in a graveyard of pulverized silicates. Against the exterior armor whipped jagged rock fragments. Off the transparent aluminum viewport, Thorne casually wiped a smudge of condensation with his thumb. Raised his right hand, dropped it, began the ambush. Shifted the pitch of the Vanguard's drives into a bone-rattling whine. Against Alara's hip, her private datapad vibrated. The encrypted Sovereignty Council order she read under strobing red lights. Allow the Solari maneuver to fail. Let the Warbringer burn. 11 years of bloodshed her government wanted to resume for profit. Her finger hovered over the glass. The record she deleted, a singular choice. Toward the dying star, the fleet accelerated. To bypass the renegade cast's radiation shields, a gravitational slingshot was required. Coronal plasma friction would strip the enemy's defenses before their sensors recalibrated. Nav, hold us 20,000 kilometers above the photosphere, Thorne ordered, checking a structural readout. Any lower and the hull paint might blister. Atomic vaporization he called a blister. At the comms station sat Ensign Leo Kale, 19 standard years old. His hands shook so violently his stylus slipped, clattering onto the deck grating, yet his eyes never blinked. Unbroken eye contact with the telemetry he maintained, feeding the exact coordinates of their suicidal plunge to the helm. Solar fury filled the viewport, blindingly bright through the polarization filters. The Vanguard trembled under the gravitational stress. Before issuing the final firing solution to disable the enemy flagship, Thorn slowly rolled his shoulders, popping a joint in his neck with a soft, ordinary crunch. Erupted the kinetic batteries in a surgical volley. Through coronal interference, tungsten slugs shredded the Renegade flagship's thrusters and weapon capacitors. Not the reactor, not the life support modules. Absolute precision it was. Disabled, the enemy vessel hung helplessly above the stellar inferno. Renegade Command, this is Thorn. Power down or burn. From the comms came an immediate assent. Thorn cut the channel. Alara stared at him, her Zalari instincts screaming. A verbal surrender, without demanding deactivation codes or securing hostages. It was a blatant trap. No defeated caste would yield without physical subjugation. Except they did. Across the holomap, 300 Renegade signatures powered down their targeting matrices simultaneously, abandoning their push toward the Solari colonies. Alara watched the data flow in silence. The stars did not fear his weapons. They feared his word. To break a surrender with a human was to invite a retaliation so complete, even the Zylari could not compute it. His integrity was a weapon of mass compliance. By Zylari standards, Thorn was a sovereign-class apex threat, equated to the stellar phenomenon they had just surfed. But standing beside him, Alara recognized the profound gap between a species' capability for violence and their execution of it. The glare of the dying star faded from the viewport, replaced by the steady light of deep space. That light caught the dented metal watering can resting on the console. A thin stream of filtered water fell from the rusted spout. Dark soil soaked around the roots of the crimson fire ferns. Thorn adjusted the microclimate dial one final notch.